Hi everyone, Christopher Ludwig here, Editor-in-Chief at Ultimate Media. Thanks for joining us again for another non-live edition of the live stream hour, where we're going to be going through some of the audience questions from our recent live stream focused on digital technology and innovation in production and logistics, where we had a lot of comments and questions, particularly around Ford's digitalization of its logistics and supply chain in many global regions, including Asia, South America, and Africa. And we're very pleased that we're able to bring back to the show Amlan Bose, who leads digitalization initiatives across the supply chain from Ford's international market groups. And Amlan has very generously agreed to come back and answer the questions in quite a lot of detail. So thanks very much to Amlan for that. But before we get going, I'd like to thank our partners in the live stream hour and the Automotive Festival of Transformation, CNW Courier Network, HAL Horizon Auto Logistics, Inform Software, Proact International, Fract Logistics Solutions, all highly specialized providers and IT specialists dedicated to the automotive logistics space. So do check out more information on them. So again, I want to welcome back to the show Amlan. Amlan, I'm looking forward to connecting with you here. Do you want to come back online from Chennai?
Yeah, hi, good day.
My pleasure to have you back, and hope you're all well, despite the challenges there in India. So obviously plenty going on there, but the focus of our show today is going to be going back on some of the questions that we discussed following our session the other week. So let's pull up the first question, because we have quite a few to get through. So the first question, perhaps unsurprisingly, was about the system that you told us about in the live stream. Noting this is a very impressive journey to digitalize logistics using JDA and insourcing more functions, is it a journey that Ford is planning globally, or is it region specific? Of course, Amlan, this is referencing the insourcing you told us about in the prior show, notably where you've taken a 4PL function in-house and particularly done this in India and I believe already parts of Africa, Asia, and moving to South America. And I guess the question on many people's mind is, frankly, will you consider this, or are you considering this in other major regions as well?
Sure. Well, it's a very interesting question because it has kept us also going in the last 2 years that we started this journey as to where it ends, where this journey of transformational change in this the COE activity that we have started. When we started this project, it was meant only for the Indian plants and the Indian operations. Seeing its success, we decided to take it to Thailand. We have 2 operations in Thailand as well. And then as we started really making the system and its efficiencies started really making noise, and we started proving that this really works, that we were told then as a leadership to go and try this out in our South African market, which is a much larger production center for us. And then having successfully done that there too, we are now going and taking to South American markets of Brazil and Argentina. So a project which was not meant to be taken global, but more was kicked off as, is it possible to do it in a different way, has now literally gone to half the way world around. And now the bigger question that is in the back of all of our mind, including our leadership in Detroit, is that if it can be successfully done in one business group in Asia Pacific and international market group, what stops it from doing it into the larger, much larger, complex business group of North America and Europe? So those provoking questions have started. We are having discussions all around, but I don't think it is that far-fetched to imagine one day when the same thing, perhaps in some shape or form, would be practiced in the other regions as well.
Well, that's certainly very interesting that this began as an India-based project and moved so globally already, and that has the potential to potentially spread further. So I think, understanding and knowing how complicated some of these changes can be, especially in some of the perhaps more established markets, that's certainly an interesting aspect that we're going to want to pay close attention to. But let's move on to another question. So the next question is referencing to the use of GPS in the system, and are the ping interfaces generated by vendors, or is it an API from Ford?
Yeah. So see, the GPS pings, of course, as we all use throughout the world, is the GPS devices are fixed in the trucks and the trailers, which brings our material, and they are connected with through API with the JDA TMS. JDA TMS is connected with our ERP. So as soon as there is an activity of a truck moving from A to B, or halting, or unloading, getting inside a supplier premises, or inside any other warehousing premises, or inside a port, or any such activity, the ping is constantly getting connected back into the TMS. And from TMS, it gets constantly connected back to my ERP. So the physical reality is what's happening on the ground, and the status which I'm able to see, be it on my TMS site, be it in my screen or in my mobile, or the status getting updated in my ERP in terms of stock availability or a potential shortage, is constantly getting updated. So the ping generated from the GPS device in the trucks and the trailers, and then rest of the thing is through the API connectivity reaching me in multiple devices and forms.
Okay, very interesting. So, Amlan, is that a cloud-based system, and is the cloud based in India or other locations?
That's right. It's the whole JDA TMS TMOD is a cloud-based thing, and I think it. I'm not very sure currently where are they hosting. Maybe I can bring in my colleague Logesh, who can add a few comments on where exactly the cloud server is currently hosted for the TMS that we're using. Logesh.
Hi, good day, team. Yes, this the cloud is hosted in the Frankfurt, and the signals it goes from the GPS device, goes to the cloud server in the Frankfurt, and then gets back to the TMS. So it all happens in a very quick turnaround of time, and as Amlan mentioned, it feeds back to the TMS and shows live shortage.
Thanks, Logesh. And while you're on it, Logesh, would you also like to comment on the frequency of the pings, and at what frequency we get the pings, and how quick and fast and efficient the whole system is?
Yeah. So the frequency of the ping, okay, we can define based upon the region. So in India, Thailand, South Africa, we define the pings every 15 minutes. The ping comes when the truck is in transit. So the frequency of the ping is every 15 minutes, and even the lag. When we mention the lag, the exact truck position versus the lag will be hardly will be 1 minute or 2 minutes. That will be the live lag difference. So the frequency will be 15 minutes, Chris and Aman.
Good. Yeah, good. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lokesh, for that insight. Really interesting to learn a bit more about the frequency and locations of the pings there. Let's go to our next question, and this question from our audience is: so, what would you name as the biggest or some of the biggest challenges to implement the projects related to digitalization in the way that you described?
Okay, as I think we mentioned during the webinar also, we had the challenges can be defined into two. One is the upstream and one is the downstream. The upstream challenges were more in terms of to bring a paradigm shift into our leadership, into the thinking process, as the way Ford Motor Company works in this whole space of logistics and 4PL, and the very fact of outsourcing, insourcing 4PL, bringing a TMS and optimizer and doing the job ourselves. So that whole thought process itself was very new, and that was a big challenge for us to bring it constructively to the leadership and get their approval and alignment to allow us and to proceed, starting with India as a market. That was an upstream process. Having done that and getting the approval and then moving into the project, I think the rest of it was more in terms of when we started working with the teams to if there are specialists who are very good in terms of the tool, the system itself, and the coding and the algorithm and all that which goes with it. And we of course know, we being Ford, in terms of what exactly we want in the automotive space. Where we realized the opportunities were is for the two teams to realize each other's point of view. For example, a guy who is very strong in coding the tool and the system need not necessarily have an automotive background. So for him, for us to reach out to him to explain from where we are coming, so that's something which we felt is a very interesting challenge. And I think the team has since then evolved furthermore out of it, of how we can have within a service provider who are experts in providing these kind of services, different expertise or domain knowledge of the industry that you're working in. For example, automotive, in our case, it can be pharmaceuticals, it can be retail sector, so things like that. So that is something which we found is a domain knowledge on both sides of the two partners that we have been working and collaborating on. But I think having done that, now that we have successfully implemented in all of the markets, I think there is a much more better appreciation of exactly how an automotive industry works, and hence how the tool now need to resonate in the same way that the automotive industry needs it to resonate. Because the same tool, remember, is also serving a pharma or serving all other industries. So that, I think, was a very interesting challenge that the two teams came across, and then we evolved through it.
Okay, fascinating to hear about those challenges. Our next question, will the digital control towers be important in identifying logistics disruptions such as those we see currently? So, in other words, are the control towers likely to help you in the recovery or the ongoing disruptions that we see from the COVID crisis?
Yeah, see, we already are used to the physical control towers. We have been using it for years. Particularly the service providers, the logistics, those who are experts in the logistics domain, each of them marvel and excel in running efficiently their control towers. What we are talking in this journey, when we have having insourced using this tool, the TMS, is creating an ecosystem wherein you're no more talking of a physical control tower, but a digital control tower. And where the moment you talk digital, you have to talk end to end, or else the stream breaks in between. And then the digitization, if it doesn't flow and it's obstructed through digital and then manual, then the continuity breaks. So it's a digital control tower through which you are able to have the entire end-to-end supply chain, with the advantage of converting it into an entire autonomous chain of process, which is a big enabler. So our attempt is how we can not only use and the basic data, as we discussed in the earlier question, is just the ping. That is actually at the end of the day the only data which matters in logistics. It's the ping which is going, and then it's coming out and informing you a variety of KPIs or variety of intelligent informations that you need to know. And all of that, if it happens, and on that, if you put the layer of machine learning and artificial intelligence, then those informations then gets further converted into real, which like to and be informed about. So all of that ecosystem, in the heart of it is the digital control tower, which brings all these data points together, converts it into an intelligent processor by using the ML and AI, and then throws out the data. And we were talking about in future we would be using haptics technology on top of this, so that that data transfer and the information transfer is no more in data form, but in haptics form. So that's taking and pushing the digital control tower to really further ends. So in this entire journey, if you have to identify one heartbeat, one central theme, is how successfully you are converting your physical control tower into a digital control tower, and to what extent you're ready to push the boundary to make it an end-to-end autonomous supply chain.
So, next question wants to get to the heart of some of the other aspects that the system might be able to provide beyond the TMS side. So, can you do flow simulation, network simulations, greenfield studies? Does it allow the opportunity to perform supplier sourcing while supporting the RFQ process up to contract pricing and negotiation? So, can you tell us about that, Amlan?
Yeah. So there are two modules that we have got the license. We have taken the license from JDA. One is the TMS, the Transport Management System, and the other is TMOD, the Transport Modeler. So it is using this Transport Modeler is what we use it for what if scenario planning. And those are done keeping the production database safe and only for future what if scenarios. So it allows you, whether it is a question of in your supply chain, you're bringing in new supplier footprints, or you are opening up a new manufacturing site somewhere in the supply chain, or you're talking of involving added warehousing space in some remote part of the world. You need to bring all these new elements into the purview of your network design. That would have an impact on how your future network would look like, for which you need to do the study today in terms of cost, lead time, what should be the nature of the equipments, what should be the overall transit time of this whole end-to-end supply chain that you're talking about. All of that can be done if you start feeding the data into the TMOD, and you can do multiple iterations, keep changing, keep planning multiple regional locations or even country locations till you get the best fit and the best logistics cost and the most optimized cost of your supply chain. So it is possible by using the modular. We are doing it, and we are gradually getting expert on that. What we do not use it though for, as the question mentions, an RFQ or an RFI process, because that's something which, of course, in Ford we have a very strict discipline of, the whole thing is taken care by purchasing. But what we do is feed all this intelligent data to our purchasing community, which helps them to take the right decision based on the various permutation combinations of the various freight cost models that we provide. So yes, it really helps you to do a very strong scenario planning and what if analysis using the modular.
So that's very interesting in the cost modeling. Would you also be able to do scenario planning for parts purchasing cost as well for the logistics side? I mean, obviously I understand for making logistics purchases, but would that help purchasing to make sourcing decisions too, if they can simulate logistics costs and risks about that?
It's a very interesting dimension you're bringing in. See, the whole optimizer works on the basis of constraints. So the more number of constraints you put it takes care of all the constraining factors, and it throws out the best possible solution to you. So it is quite possible to throw or to put in the database to the system in terms of, if you choose a scenario A, the material cost of these suppliers is X. If you choose scenario B, it's Y. If you choose scenario C, there can be other constraints that you can put in. It can be importation, it can be customs, it can be most favored nations, it can be pertaining to FTA, customs duty, trade benefits, or discounted duty or rebates coming from certain countries to certain countries. So you can put in all those constraining factors into that. So those are not logistics costs, but you are putting those constraining factors, and then you can run the system so that it gives you a complete overall holistic picture of not only the logistics cost and the logistics parameters of transit time and all that, but also what would be the best material cost scenario. So it's possible, but we haven't launched it in the purchasing domain, but the optimizer has the capability and it is ready to run based on all the constraints that you put it.
Fantastic, very interesting. And again, I think, interesting to think about those capabilities as we look at more resilient supply chains, in the wake of the crisis. But again, let's go to the next question. And does this system that Ford uses provide and track and trace visibility? And the reference here is that there was perhaps a similar system in Europe that Ford may use. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but nonetheless, can you talk about whether this system provides the track and trace visibility for India?
Yeah, that's right. No, I'm sure, even though I have a broad idea of what kind of track and trace we are using in Ford of Europe, and all the essential elements of track and trace in logistics and supply chain is essentially the same, which is you need to know what is being carried and where it is, and what are the relationships of the material and its position vis-a-vis what is the end destination is. That's all you need to know in a track and trace. So the TMS has built upon very, very strongly. And as I said, at the very base is the ping. The ping generates the entire loop of the entire route that the truck is taking, or a vehicle is taking, or a conveyance is taking. And you can actually track from A to B to see how it is traveling. You can also track, based on your designed network, what is the actual route or network that the truck or the truck driver is taking. That can also give you an intelligent output as to, is there an opportunity for you to do your design better, because seems like there is a new highway open, for example, recently, which the driver is aware of, but you have not yet updated your maps or your distant bands, and hence you are still planning it in using the old data, whereas the driver seems to be moving in a much more smarter route. So you have the plan versus actual, so you can further goes back. So it's basically constantly the optimizer is getting fed with the performance of the last performances, and it learns from it and it betters itself. So the track and trace is a very, very strong and very, very commanding presence that we see in this whole TMS. And we not only get the position, but also then, as I was telling you, because the TMS is linked to my ERP, so it constantly keeps feeding the current ground situation. And if the ETA is changing, it automatically updates my ERP of the changing ETAs, and then whole host of other supply chain activities are then kicked off automatically by the respective supply chain team based on the constant changing situation of the transportation. So and I'm sure the European track and trace is no different to that. The only difference is perhaps in IMG, in International Market Group, and in Asia Pacific, we're doing it ourselves. In Ford of Europe, maybe it's done by a DHL or a DSV.
Let's go to the next question. So the question was, if you are to use this system, or say if a manufacturer is to use that system, does it automatically imply insourcing of a 4PL? And of course, that is again a reference to what Ford did in terms of how you implemented the system, you know, kind of after or in the process of insourcing. But do you see that as implicitly tied, or would you be able to run that in conjunction with also kind of maintaining outsourced 4PL?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, though. No, it need not, because what basically we are doing through insourcing is, as I was saying, is that we have been able to successfully bring the knowledge base and the intelligence within the four walls of Ford. That's something which we started the journey with, and we have successfully been able to do that. Having done that, if we were to suppose look into any other critical business unit within Ford, where there is already an outsourced 4PL and they are already doing through their suite of tools and systems, but what we can tell them is the various key efficient parameters that we are using and the tool is serving us. You can actually impress upon them to either enhance their tools or bring elements of the AI and the ML parameters that we are talking of, infusing our TMS and our control tower with. So all those things you can feed to them. So the existing 4PL in any other market can actually enhance their tool, taking inputs and clues from this success factor, and they can further enhance that. So it is not necessary for you to insource it, but the question then comes is that generally any large service provider in the logistics supply chain field have their inherent TMSs. And each TMS has its own pros and cons and strengths and weaknesses, and it's a question of continuous journey. But we are, as Ford IMG, are in a very strong position to play the role of that of an advisor to other markets to say what their TMS or their logistics and supply chain ecosystem might be missing and how they can strengthen it. So that advisory role we can play based on the knowledge that we have learned.
Very interesting, and I think a key point is there's perhaps the insourcing was more about the knowledge and skills than it was the system as such. So I think that is indeed a very important aspect of this. Let's go to another question. We have a few more, and thank you again, Amlan, for your time and going through all these. So the next question was, did you work with any logistics providers to improve cube utilization or improvements in packaging? So I believe, again, a reference to aspects of the project which did improve cube utilization. Did Ford do that in-house, or was that done together with logistics providers?
Yeah, no, it is an ongoing journey, as you know. So the tool, obviously, as we showed the other day, gives you the power of a 3D cube vision. So while you're designing the network, you can see how the boxes with its dimensions and its orientations and weight parameters are getting filled up in a truck. And based on that, you take the right call, whether about the equipment, whether about then changing your route pattern or pickup patterns and all that. When you do that, uh, ultimately the job has to be on the ground, has to be done by the carriers, the transport carriers. So when we share them the 3D vanning pattern, and there are some practical difficulties in actually loading the boxes like that, or the box parameters, dimensions, weights are a little different to what they're actually seeing physically, then that feedback mechanism comes and we immediately go and see and we correct it. The correction can be either in terms of data correction, there can be junk in and junk out, or it can be in terms of adherence and discipline from the supplier. That it is supposed to be a certain dimension or packaging quality or pattern, but the supplier is not adhering to it, and it's maybe giving in different dimensions or different layers. So it's a two-way process. So there is a close interaction between us and our carriers, and also then our packaging team, and also our supplier base. So it's again, we go back to the same ecosystem where the data is actually telling you that something is not right, or you can improve upon it, and then you all come together and fulfill that. In many of the cases, the transporter have come and told us, the carriers have told us that if only you can reduce this dimension to something else, we feel we can increase much more and improve the cube utilization. So we have taken that input, done the study, involved our packaging team, and we came out indeed with that. So it really helps us in every way for each one of us, all the stakeholders, to improve. It has brought a lot of discipline into the carriers and their consolidation points, where they're constantly receiving and loading and unloading things. So that whole area, that whole aspect is discipline. And also from our side, it has really helped us to get our data perfect and cleaned, not to 99.9%, but to 100%, because the system will not work if the data is not absolutely perfect to what is on the ground. And the supplier discipline of complete compliance and adherence to what the tool is suggesting.
Okay, thank you again. Let's move on to another question. This one quite interesting, I think. Do you see Ford's creation of this internal compensative supply chain and optimization possibly becoming a future scalable service, much like Caterpillar did with Cat Logistics, which of course was later spun off as a moneymaker? That might seem like a bit of a jump from where you are right now, but nonetheless, is it something that you've considered or would consider at Ford?
Well, as a potential, yes. And we have seen many organizations. We have seen Honda as an OEM, also have Honda Logistics. In India, we have seen Mahindra and Mahindra as one of the largest SUV makers have Mahindra Logistics. We know Hyundai has its own logistics arm. So yes, there are offshoots like that. And perhaps the thought process behind creating a logistics arm of your own, if you're such a company of such large and complex dimensions, is that again the intelligence stays within, and over a period of time you become expert in knowing what to do and how to do, rather than telling someone else to do it for you. So yes, there is, as a potential, it's always there, but I don't see immediately in the near future we as Ford Motor Company necessarily want to take that leap forward. But definitely it has allowed us the scalability of this whole insourcing process has really done phenomenal in terms of sitting in Chennai and managing the inbound logistics of a country as distant as Brazil and Argentina is phenomenal. And I think that is possible because we have been able to digitize the whole logistics design, network planning, track and trace, uh, using this central tool, the TMS and the TMOD, and the continuous journey that we push towards further digitizing the control tower, and bringing other elements of, be it the RPA bots, be it the data analytics, and be it the ML and the artificial intelligence and the machine learning capabilities that we are now working to further enhance. So that journey is constantly allowing you to, as if, stay one step ahead of the curve. And with this scalability, which is already built into the tool, the sky is the limit. You can literally sit in one particular place and handle it for the entire Ford Motor Company. And taking that model, if not Ford, but someone else, any other provider can do it for the whole world. And that brings us to a huge interesting point, which we often end up discussing and debating with our carriers, is that the whole concept of having multiple physical control towers from country to country to country, region to region to region, for different uh, customers and clients. We don't need that at all. We can actually do away with all of that waste in the ecosystem, and we can have one central digital control tower with physical men and machines spread throughout the world, and working in harmony, being controlled and designed from that one single center of excellence location. I think that is the ultimate power of this tool and this whole thought process of this COE.
Yeah, I think this is very interesting to think about, and certainly notable that these competencies could serve that use later. But I think probably also perhaps to a certain extent already doing that internally, right? As you mentioned, now that you've built up this competency in optimization and visibility with the service, then you're already advising other regions in terms of implementing this, or perhaps looking at systems or other solutions. So I suppose even as an internal 4PL, you've already gone some way towards expanding that. But let's turn to another question. What's the timeline for reaching the future, more radically automated vision that you outlined when we had the show? And of course, you talked about the now, the near, and the far. So maybe you can share a little bit about when you see some of the more advanced AI and automated aspects of this.
Yeah, the whole now, near, far timeline that we showed. Near is now is of course now, which we have been working for the last 1 year or so. Near is 0 to 12 months timeline, from now to 12 months, and then far is uh, from now to 24 months. So we are literally talking of 12 to 24 months. So we are really not talking of something at a very distant future. So we are really talking of doing it rather very quickly. Now, obviously, things need to fall in place. The ecosystem also need to gear up. Now, quite obviously, COVID has not been very beneficial in kind of helping us with the timeline, but the COVID has really necessarily bring, and I'm observing it all, more and more into all our industries, and when I talk to the industry friends globally, is that COVID is actually hastening the critical need for us to go digital more quickly rather than slowly. The need to go more autonomous and less dependency on human factor, uh, and need to go more quickly into the whole artificial intelligence and the machine learning space, where we can take as if a leap forward. So if everything goes well, and we can prove the whole cost equation to it, I'm sure we're talking of 12 to 24 months before we can have a highly advanced TMS capable and loaded with the AI and ML.
Okay, well, I think it's fair to say that's going to be a very interesting 24 months, and there's certainly a span of time that we'll be keeping close in touch with you and with Ford to bring more updates and share more of these lessons. Amlan, that's all the questions that we had, but I really wanted to thank you for all of this insight, both today and during the original live stream hour, when we obviously went into also a lot of depth of this system. So know there's a lot more to share, but it's really been fascinating to spend this time and go through the questions with you. I'd like to just take another moment now to thank and acknowledge our partners in the live stream hour and Automotive Festival of Transformation. So again, our partners are ProAct International and Fract Logistics Solutions, two great IT providers in the automotive logistics space, with very specialized services in vehicle logistics and, of course, many other areas of the supply chain. So certainly very relevant as well to our discussion today. Also like to acknowledge our other partners in this series, C&W Courier Network, very key premium freight and expedited logistics service providers serving global locations, very focused on automotive. Hull Horizon Auto Logistics, again, a fantastic terminal provider, very active in the vehicle logistics and vehicle handling and processing space. And Inform, another major IT and software provider, highly focused on finished vehicle and automotive logistics, as well as other sectors. Don't miss more of our series. Check out the original live stream hour, but also what we have ahead. We've got features with Volkswagen, on IT. We're going to be talking with startups on Ineos. We've got and also on more on ports and sustainability, building up to a fantastic season finale over multiple parts at the end of July. So register for our series if you haven't already. Keep up with it. It's free. If you want to know more, get in touch with me or our team, and we're always interested to hear your ideas. So thanks again for joining us. Catch us every week, and we'll be bringing you more Your Quest is Answered and other videos and podcasts along the way. Thanks very much.